This build breaks Deepwoken's fundamental combat. Everyone knows about block parry dodge, but what happens when you remove the ability to block, letting any move in the entire game insta-guard break? Well, that lets you do things like this. I think those clips speak for themselves about the build's strength. Not only can it hit 8 guard breaks in a row combos, but it's also insanely tanky and works extremely well in ganks. So, let's get into everything you need to know about this build. The idea behind the build is to abuse Salt Chemist posture potions to the extreme. Unlike almost every other Salt Chemist build I've seen before, this build relies on damage with your weapon rather than mantras. So, to maximize damage, I use a stone, shattered or alloyed katana, because stone gives a 1.5 times damage multiplier when you posture break with an M1, which, as you can guess, this build does a lot. The build is designed to be used in ganks, but works just as well in Chime. For ganks, I highly recommend using Opposer's Ring, which stores your damage until you unsheath, which counters a massive amount of the problems ganking has, like track stars and people swapping out, because they can't heal damage they haven't taken yet. However, the maximum damage you can do with one unsheath is 70%, so you need to deal at least 30% of their health first in order to one-shot someone, and this is where the mantras come in. So starting off with how to make the posture potions, which are the most important part of the build. You will need 3 calabash and 2 bamboo, then put in all of the Salt Chemist salts. This potion is insanely powerful. After doing some testing, I found out that it increases your posture damage by exactly 10 times, meaning that any move in the entire game that does more than 1 bar of posture will insta-guard break. The easiest way to hit someone's block and start a combo is to M1 feint into a fast mantra like Shoulder Bash or Ice Lance, which, if it guard breaks, gives you another free M1. Then you want to use another mantra and immediately feint it and then M1 again. If they react to the mantra feint, the next M1 will hit block again and immediately posture break. And you can continue repeating this as long as they keep reacting to get massive guard break combos like I do here. The other 2 potions you use are up to you, but I would recommend using damage reduction potions. They're more effective on higher damage weapons, and as you can see here, it makes me take about 38% less damage. And putting that into perspective, it essentially makes my health go from 515 to 817, which is absolutely insane. To make them, it's 3 crustacean meat and 2 spider eggs. Lastly, I used the standard healing potion, made with 3 beeswax and 2 goblettos, which combined with a spit and reinforce, he was about 1.5 bars. Alone, healing potions are very difficult to drink, but this is where Permafrost Prison comes in, as when people run away, you can turn your back and drink the potion like I do here. Those were the potions, and now I'm going to explain the mantras and why I went them. This is a clip of someone fighting me while I was practicing the build in Chime, and you can clearly see how oppressive the build is to fight.
4th down.
The reason why I went ice on this build is because of the talent Fragile Freeze, which makes it so that whenever you block break with an ice mantra, you stun them for an extended period of time. And by the way, Permafrost Prison procs this too. The longer window to punish lets you get things like spine cutters or crits off much easier, and it completely prevents venting as well while they're frozen. This best synergizes with Ice Lance because it's an extremely fast ice mantra that will also proc Fragile Freeze. Unfortunately, when I was progressing my build, I accidentally re-rolled Ice Lance, so that's why I used Shoulder Bash instead, but Ice Lance is definitely the better option.
Yeah.
I also picked up Frozen Pincushion, letting Ice Daggers also freeze, giving a 3-in-1 whenever it lands. That was my thought process behind going 60 Frostroar pre-shrine, but the reason I went for Shadow as well was both for Permafrost Prison, which is extremely good in ganks, as well as the go-to method for being able to drink healing potions without being punished. It also gives me access to Shadow Eruption, which is one of the strongest mantras in the entire game, and another mantra that hits block an extremely high amount. But to tell you the truth, you can really go any mantras you want. As long as they hit block a lot and do over half a bar of posture, anything will work with this build. The downside of going attunements post-shrine is that my mantras do next to 0 damage, other than the final mantra, which is Master's Flourish, which in my opinion is a must-have on all medium builds. It's the only mantra that's level 5 and does decent damage, so I use this in my fights to get my opponent below 70%, letting me one-shot them with a single unsheath. Master's Flourish does take a bit of practice to use, but knowing how to land it will help massively. I mean, just look at how easy it is for me to land, even against the top 50. And so I'm going to very briefly go over the simplest combo that works just as well in 1000 elo as it does in top Chime. You want to use Master's Flourish as a punish for people spamming M1, and you do this by M1 fainting, then immediately using Master's Flourish after you're fainted M1. That's all for the mantras. And lastly, I've made some stats that should help you decide if this is the right build for you. I've rated the build's combos, mix-ups, mobility, difficulty to play, difficulty to make, and the competitive viability. The combos are amazing. I love hearing 10 different guard break sounds stacked on top of each other. Some of the most fun combos I've ever done. The mix-ups are pretty good. But against people with low enough ping to roll the mantras, you do need more mix-up than just M1ing into Ice Lance, but this really only applies to top 250s and above. The mobility is a bit poor. You can get Glacial Arc plus Ice Lance for some vertical mobility, but I luckily ended up rolling Teleportation as my bell, which fully negated the need for any mobility. I would say this build is difficult to play because it does involve both M1 and mantra feints, which can be unintuitive to newer players. But the mix-ups are still quite basic and simple, so I wouldn't rate it a 5 out of 5. I would also say that this build is very viable for high elo Chime, as I don't consider myself a top player, but still got top 250 multiple times just by playing on this build. However, if it wasn't obvious, this build is pretty cheese. It is a Shrine of Order build, and does require quite specific mantras and talents pre-shrine, so it may require knowledge or multiple tries to make successfully. Definitely not the easiest build to make. And lastly, whether it's better suited for ganks or 1v1s. I would definitely say that this build in particular is mainly for ganks. However, the concept and use cases of insta-guard breaking is very transferable, and I will link different builds with the same idea behind them, just more optimized for 1v1s or mantra damage in the description. With all that finally over with, thank you for watching. I hate it when people hide the builder link in their Discord to give them an inflated subscriber count, so instead, if you did enjoy this video that I put a massive amount of effort into, consider subscribing for more unique builds. I also have other videos about powerful bugs, which if you haven't seen, I recommend watching those as well.